everyone, and welcome to Inside Gaming, where today we are doing a preview of the Mortal Kombat 11 beta. It's a closed beta, and it's been pretty exciting. There's tons of gameplay that's gone up, so we thought we'd chat about our impressions. First up, core mechanics. We've got a couple of returning things and some new things. Lawrence, what did you have to say about those?
Well, Mortal Kombat's always been weird. Most of their fighting games are pretty timing intensive when it comes to stringing together combos or something like that. Mortal Kombat is more like a typewriter. You just rattle out the buttons, and then ever since Mortal Kombat 3, it's kind of been like that. And shockingly, Mortal Kombat 11 is not really any exception. I think what's cool is that already in the beta, Mortal Kombat 11 gives you all the frame data. They tell you if a combo hits high or low, and it makes it pretty easy to build your tool set really fast. Typically in a game like this, you'll want like a bread and butter, something that comes up real quick and does a good amount of damage. You want something that hits overhead and something that hits low. So if you just scroll through the move list, you can find those really fast, tag them, they show up on the screen. They don't show up in multiplayer, which is kind of a bummer, but I guess I get why. So yeah, it's the basics. It's pretty cool because Mortal Kombat at its base layer is kind of the same as it's always been. But there's some tweaky stuff that kind of changes it all up.
Yeah, I feel like timing-wise, it feels pretty much the same. It feels kind of heavy, but I like that. That's what Mortal Kombat has always felt like to me. But I found myself learning combos easier this time around. I feel like I'm picking the game up faster.
That makes sense.
Nick, how have you felt about just basic combo stuff?
I was able to just kind of figure out, okay, these are my buttons that cancel into special moves, and I wasn't able to get much more than like super basic combos. I was just trying to rely as much on my very basic, broad fighting game fundamentals as much as I could, and I found myself keeping pace with the people it was matching me up against anyway. It feels a little bit more Street Fighter-ish to me, which is actually kind of more of my forte. I learned fighting games on Street Fighter. Didn't really touch Mortal Kombat 2 very much until some years later. So I do appreciate how a lot of this game feels more at home for me personally. That said, it is definitely, it's a slower pace I've noticed from Mortal Kombat 9 and definitely Mortal Kombat 10, where you do a combo, immediately you put them into a situation where they have to guess which way to block. In this one, there's a lot more going back to neutral, the standard footsie game that is very Street Fighter reminiscent. It is definitely a faster pace than your typical Street Fighter, but it's they're doing something different with it.
I think you're probably right in that it's a little faster, but it's not as fast as something like Marvel vs. Capcom. Like, it still definitely feels like Mortal Kombat to me.
Yes.
I mean, some of the classic characters do feel a little different. Like, I was playing Scorpion, and there were, some tricks to that he's definitely evolved as a character. So, I don't know. I feel like the changes are subtle enough that you feel like you have new things to learn, and everything feels refined, but it still definitely feels like a Mortal Kombat game, which I like. It's kind of comforting.
Yeah.
When you say it feels like a Mortal Kombat game, what does that mean for you?
Okay, a big part of that is the way that it looks, honestly, which, isn't inherently related to the word feel, but it looks so much like Mortal Kombat. It can be extremely brutal, which I love. It's, like, obviously a lot of people's favorite thing about the franchise. But it's also, I think, just the pace of fights. The way that you react to being hit is very specific to Mortal Kombat, and yeah, I want to say characters tend to feel heavier to me.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that both of you guys are kind of saying the same thing. Mortal Kombat's always been like a theatric sort of fighter. Even like Mortal Kombat 1, it was all about hitting an enemy with a move that froze them, and then the tension leading up to like a big uppercut or something like that.
Exactly.
And then there's a huge explosion of sound, and then an audience, like you can hear audience members clapping. As opposed to something like Marvel, which is just madness all the time.
Yeah.
And 11 certainly has that. It's got the crushing blow system, which is kind of like their little mini X-rays. And I love that they're still taking the spirit of Mortal Kombat, kind of along with what you're talking about. The idea that it's two heavy, chunky fighters just beating the shit out of each other. Mm-hmm. And they've adapted that really well into a new fighting system that still keeps that sort of big drumbeat sort of rhythm of fighting versus something like Marvel, which is, it's interesting too because in the mechanics sense, and Nick, you were kind of talking about this, if you have the advantage in Marvel, you can press it for a very long time, and you typically keep it until you mess up. Whereas in Mortal Kombat, if you get the advantage, you execute a combo, you execute the best combo you can, and then your opponent is usually blasted to the other side of the screen, and then you both stand up and you're back to neutral. So I much prefer that, kind of what you were saying about Street Fighter, where it's a series of sort of mind games. Whoever wins the mind game gets to knock off a chunk of damage, and then you're back to the mind game, as opposed to having to relentlessly block these never-ending attack strings, just waiting for one opportunity to maybe get in a hit and shift it back.
It's much easier to get overwhelmed in Marvel vs. Capcom than it is in Mortal Kombat. But I do think there are the special moves and the fatal blow and even the crushing blows, like you mentioned, are things that still, if you're playing well, you're rewarded for playing well. It's not like everything's a reset and you feel like you're having something taken away from you. If you're playing well, you still get access to cool things that look awesome and make you feel like a boss, rather than it just feeling like the fight is reset constantly.
Yeah, and they were really smart about it, because so the crushing blow system, I'll get into that for a second. The mechanics of it are actually pretty amazing. So certain moves per character can do a crushing blow in specific instances. Some of them are really simple, just like land an uppercut. I think Scorpion's is just like land an uppercut and you'll like shatter the dude's jaw. It does bonus damage and then changes the properties of it a little bit. So if you uppercut with a crushing blow, it'll knock the opponent way higher so you can follow up with a combo. Whereas a normal uppercut, you'll just knock them down and that's it. What is pretty cool about that is not only does it make somebody who's just landing an uppercut feel like a badass, but you only get one of a certain kind of crushing blow per match. So if you land the uppercut, you don't get a crushing blow again until you start a new match. Which means if you have a deep knowledge of your character, then if you know where all the crushing blows are, you can sort of try to work them into your combos to extend your damage and also open up more combo potential. So not only is it a mechanic that makes you feel cool just by hitting buttons, but it actually has depth that you can extend into your game. And even if you notice that your opponent is starting to go for certain crushing blows, then you can start to block them, and then you get a mind game layer on top of what is ostensibly just a zoom in and see bone snapping mechanic, which I thought is just awesome.
There's a running theme in this, and this is part of where it feels more Street Fighter-ish to me, where there's a running theme of make everything count because you only get one shot at it, or if you get more than one shot at it, like the meter mechanics, for example, how it's split between an offensive meter and a defensive meter. In most fighting games, it's all one shared thing. Like if you want to do a defensive move or a high damage offensive move, you're probably pulling from the same meter, but not so in MK11. And also in other fighting games, this one refills, at least from what I've seen, from the characters they've shown off, it refills at a set rate. And then there's also the I don't know if you want to get into this just yet, but the fatal blows. It's another you get to land this one time in the match, and if you do it, then you've spent it. Between that and the crushing blows and the meter, there's just a lot of make sure it counts. Don't just YOLO waste it.
Yeah, it's interesting because it is absolutely that. You're right, Nick, but it's also forgiving in a weird way. So with the fatal blow, you only get one if you land it, but if you don't, it comes back after a number of seconds. So it's interesting because I've certainly played against online opponents where the second they get fatal blow, they snap it out, and it's easy to read that, and then you just block it and then punish it, and you get your damage, and you usually kill them because they're at low life anyway. But there's another layer to it where fatal blows have armor, but only for a small window in their animation. So if you know the attack you're going to get, you can fatal blow through it, provided you also have the life to soak it, because you still take damage. So it's actually really awesome that you can do something that is for new players is a slap and I want to stab this person's eyeballs out button, also still extends down into some meta thought where you can have that moment where you're looking at your life bars and you're like, okay, I have fatal blow and I have enough health, or I don't have enough health to take a hit, so I can't do it right now. I have to figure out another way to win. What's really wild is, since crushing blows do pop up, you can extend a crushing blow into a fatal blow, which does so much damage it's absurd. And I think they're really setting up for that kind of crazy comeback situation with a K, obviously. And that again plays into the idea of Mortal Kombat being a big theatric fighter, where you don't have to be able to cut through the layers of anime sparkles going on to see what's happening. It's just some dude just did a wacky combo and did 50% damage on somebody when you thought they were going to lose. So in that way, it's the spectating aspect is still there.
Yeah.
Because man, I remember back in the day, if somebody knew the fatalities on Mortal Kombat cabinet, they would have a crowd because everybody wanted to see that stuff. And I feel like this has the same spirit.
Yeah, Lawrence, you mentioned the meta of like, timing, watching when people have their fatal blows and knowing when they're going to use them. And Nick, you've spoken a lot about waiting for stuff as well. This game makes it so clear when you're going to get access to that certain thing and how that mechanic works that I feel like even newcomers or people who've never even played Mortal Kombat before will pick up those things very easily, even though they seem very meta.
I had a hard time doing meter burns in other Mortal Kombats because each move had a different meter burn input. Meter burn is essentially you do a special move, and if you hit one button, it'll burn half your attack meter, and it'll either extend the duration of the move or add attacks to it. So, and that also extends into other properties. So like Scorpion's Spear, he'll pull you and then slash you, and then that will stagger you so you can continue into a combo, but it also has longer recovery. So it's one of those things like, if somebody's doing a move and you're looking at their meter and they don't have any meter, then you know you can punish right away. If they do have meter, then you're like, okay, they might burn, and if they do, then you have to wait for that and keep blocking. And if you read it, you can punish it, provided you know your own moves as well.
Yeah, you need to. Yeah, you wrote this note literally in a document. You have to watch your opponent's meters to know when you can and can't punish, as well as playing the game thinking of yourself. You have to think of them, and that seems like a standard thing to do. But I feel like a lot of new players don't play fighting games that way. They just try to spam as much as they can, and I feel like Mortal Kombat 11 being like this might even make people better at other fighting games. Makes you think a little harder, I think, and that's probably the part of it that impressed me the most.
I don't know about your experience, but based on, like you said, based on the fact that the meters regenerate over time, I burn special moves all the time now. I don't know if that was your experience too.
A little bit. Like, I think where that feeling comes from is probably that you're on equal footing in terms of like gaining meter as your opponent. Because like in a lot of other fighting games, if one character has like really crazy block strings that, once you block it, you just have to stay blocking for a long time, that'll build up more meter for the opponent in most fighting games than for the defending player. So in this game, because both people are guaranteed to regain those offensive and defensive meters at the exact same rate.
Yeah, and I guess the other side of that is if your meter's full, you're wasting meter because it's not regenerating.
Yeah,
so, really are.
Yeah, so and also in Grand Mortal Kombat fashion, everything does block damage, whereas in other fighters, mostly it's just special moves. So there's no reason to not burn meter as long as it's safe if your meter's full, which I think is another interesting way, and kind of like Alana, like you said, that it might probe players into exploring mechanics they might otherwise just rule out as being too complicated.
I hope so.
You mentioned doing chip damage, everything. There is an exception with the flawless block system that
you're right. Yeah.
From what I gather, you hit, I think it's back and block at the exact moment a move hits. And I've seen people like on YouTube who have spent a lot of time with earlier builds of the game. They were able to use that to basically interrupt opponents' block strings, so that you essentially parry an attack in the middle of a string, and then if you do it just right, you can actually full-on punish, and suddenly their offensive pressure becomes your combo.
Oh, that's so cool. So you can go from being in block stun to doing a perfect block?
There's gaps. You have to know where the gaps are.
That makes sense, yeah.
Which is a lot of the reason why I didn't really pull that off, at least that I can remember.
Again, plays into the theme of Mortal Kombat being a chunky but theatric fighter, of having this explosive move that suddenly flips the momentum when you didn't even expect it to happen.
So based on
cool.
the beta, without getting into too much repetition, I was just going to ask what were your favorite takeaways from it? What was the thing that you liked the most, or the thing that impressed you the most?
The way that they can make a mechanic that delivers to somebody that just rolls up and grabs a controller, they can give them that Mortal Kombat experience of just seeing two beef mountains eviscerate each other. But also have all of those same mechanics in their existing form also extended to a lot of gameplay depth and a lot of like rock, paper, scissors mind games. That's really exciting. The way that they both simplified the input complexity but also kept a lot of the headspace of what a fighting game is. I'm really excited for it. And also, frankly, I think kind of like Nick said, I just like slower fighters. I like the mind game more than just sitting there with my hands off the controller while somebody plays a rhythm game on their own. So yeah, I really dug the pace of it. I like focusing on footsies and spacing and mind games more than input complexity. So for me, up and down, this game is, so far, seems like it's super tailored to me. We'll see when the game comes out, because people find cheap shit and it can become insufferable.
You just haven't learned it yet. How about you,
Yeah,
Nick?
exactly.
Well, like I said, this is a Mortal Kombat game that feels like it's more my kind of pace, and not to echo Lawrence too much, but I think we do kind of come from a similar sort of place. Just to take kind of what he was saying and put it into other words, there's a saying where fighting games, despite what like the casual observer might think, fighting games are not actually about combos. They're about how you get to the combos. It feels like Mortal Kombat 11 holds true to that more so than its predecessors, and so that that appeals to me a lot more. Other than that, I'm looking forward to some of the characters. The ones I wanted to play the most actually were not in this beta. There was a lot of Cabal players out there. I don't know if you guys had the same experience there.
I got a lot of Scorpion.
Yeah, I mostly played Scorpion.
Yeah, so then we all played Scorpion.
Yeah. Well, just so that I'm not repeating you guys, I'm just going to give a shout out to the way it looks, the graphics, and the design.
Looks awesome.
Beautiful. And the sound design.
Holy shit.
I don't know, I think it's a very impressive, complete package. And I didn't have any technical issues, but I also didn't play for very long. Did you guys see any bugs or glitches or anything?
No glitches, but you talk about the technical side of things. I would be remiss not to give props to the netcode in this game, because I don't know what your guys' experience is like, but I don't remember seeing any kind of lag, at least none that adversely affected my gameplay. People say that Killer Instinct is like the modern gold standard for online netcode, but man, Mortal Kombat 11 at the absolute least gives it a run for its money.
Yeah, it felt better than Street Fighter's launch. Like it was very well performed.
Feels better than Street Fighter today.
Yeah. Do we have any other takeaways?
Give me Noob Saibot. Noob Saibot, and did you guys see Cetrion revealed today? Well, today as we're recording this.
I'm scared, man. That's the Superman of Mortal Kombat 11. That's the one that, like, aside from Scorpion, every new player's gonna pick and just spam from the other side of the screen. The thing I was looking for was explicit mechanics to counter projectiles, and Jade kind of has them. She has a reflect, and she also has a move that lets her walk through projectiles. So that's it. So maybe I'll get a lot of easy wins from people spamming rocks across the screen by just walking on up to them and messing them up. Aside from that, I like how self-serious and utterly stupid the Mortal Kombat storyline is, so I'm looking forward to the campaign. And they've already said there's going to be a crypt with tons of unlocks, and I am just an absolute slut for unlocking Mortal Kombat stuff.
Yep.
Give me the skins, give me the concept art, with a K, obviously. They pack those games full of every asset they possibly can, so I'm very much looking forward to that.
Yeah, I think they usually even like put in photos of cosplayers and stuff. Like they get the community involved as much as they can. They put in fan art. They're very good about embracing the MK community, and it's always cool to see. When does the game come out? Later this month?
February 23rd. Sorry, April 23rd. I don't know
it was
what
like,
month
that doesn't make sense. Yeah, it comes out April 23rd, so we'll have more coverage up on Inside Gaming when it actually comes out. But Lawrence, Nick, thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
It sounds like we're all pretty excited about Mortal Kombat 11.
Oh yeah, put in Striker, you cowards.
Hell yeah. All right, we'll see you guys next time.
With Mortal Kombat 11 on the horizon, we figure now's a good time to look back at gaming's most violentest, gut-rippingest, eyeball-squelchingest, head-stompingest deaths. Number 10, Hitler's exploding head in Bionic Commando. Try and find a video game bad guy more punchable than Hitler. You can't do it. Oh, wait a minute. Bubsy?